Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another IAS podcast special. Today, we're talking about the best and worst stages within the Silent Hill franchise. Everything that we love the most, ghosts pushing us in the middle of a subway train because that's always fucking nice. And I will introduce my panel here. So I'm Renegade Operative, your host, and first we have Andre.
Yo, what's good, everyone? It's me, Andre Bevan. Been a while since we've talked about Silent Hill, and we're gonna be talking about our favorite and least favorite locations of the franchise. So this is gonna be a fun one.
Next up, we have Bernie.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good night to everybody. I guess we can have a lot of fun because I always think that Silent Hill has like some of the best and also worst stages in the whole horror gaming community. So let's have a lot of fun with that.
Next up, we have Drillbit.
Oh, hang on. I gotta sneeze real quick.
Okay. The ghost got him real quick before he had to do that, but we're gonna wait.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh,
But yeah,
no
how's everyone going? That was very bad timing, but hope this is fun.
Oh no, man, Walter Sullivan just put one in the back of your head. It's all right. So next we have Lanos.
Hi everybody, I am looking forward to this. I will try not to rant too much on these locations, but this is gonna be fun.
As I said, the bad list was the hardest. No, the bad list was actually the easiest for me, but the good list was the hardest. So yeah. Next up is Mr. Max.
Hello, my name is Max, also Electro. Thanks so much for having me again. And I was kind of the opposite. I was looking back at Silent Hill with rose-tinted glasses, trying to buy real estate. I had a hard time coming up with bad stuff to say, so we'll see how that goes.
And last but not least, we have JoJo.
What up, the resident Silent Hill nerd of IAS? I mostly hang out on the non-horror one, but I'm in the horror one every once in a while. I've been big fan of Silent Hill since Silent Hill 1, really. Love the first 4 games. I tolerate some of the games after that, and I got a lot to say about the levels. I really love them.
Oh god, he says tolerate with emphasis, so be aware of that when it's his turn. Anyway, we're gonna have the first entrant sort of talk about the best and worst levels, and that's gonna be Andre. I'm gonna go from alphabetical order, and we're gonna mute until he finishes, and then we'll go to the next person. So Andre, give your list as to what is the best and worst Silent Hill level. Start with the best.
Alrighty. Let's see with the best. In terms of the best, I want to say Blue Creek Apartments from Silent Hill 2. Reason why I really like this level a lot is it's sort of like you really don't know what's going on initially when you go inside the apartments, and you have to essentially search everywhere. And I do kind of like how us, the player, we're sort of like very isolated, and there's really no monsters, well, yet. And there is actually one part where you see Maria's dress or Mary's dress, and sort of like when you turn around, it's like, oh, okay, so that's one thing, but you get attacked by the mannequins, and aside from that, what was it? You pretty much pretty much meet Pyramid Head for the very first time. That encounter is like burned in my retinas of just how terrifying it was when it was you get the idea. And yeah, another one I really like is probably the ball from Silent Hill 3. I don't know, I just really dig how Heather kind of like wakes up, and you essentially have to investigate have to go through this like abandoned mall. There's like no people around, very isolated feeling, which I always really dig the isolated feelings in like levels in like any game. What was it? I did, but yeah, and it's another one. I guess Toluca Lake from Silent Hill 2, another Silent Hill 2 one. I don't know, just really love the atmosphere of Toluca Lake. It's a really really nice feeling level to it. Finally, Otherworld from Silent Hill 3. I think 3 has the best Otherworld, at least in my honest opinion. But yeah, that's really all I got for favorites.
All right, now move on to least favorite, and then we'll move to the next person.
Gotcha. Least favorite. Probably, honestly, the entirety of Downpour. I genuinely did not like that game. I used to think it was better than Homecoming, but then now I think I was like, Homecoming had a lot of flaws, but it was at least somewhat fun. But Downpour was just garbage. It was just a lot of bugs and problems. Like the other world in that game was just absolutely terrible. But the where it's really just a chase sequence. You're just running away. Another level I really hated was honestly, yeah, I really don't know. I think that's it. Oh yeah, well, actually, forgot one of. Actually, forgot the amusement park for favorite levels. I really dig the amusement park. Really nice level, but yeah, that's all I have to say.
All right. So next we're gonna move to Bernie. So start with your favorite levels, and then end with your least favorite, and then we'll move on to the next person.
Yes, of course. I mean, same thing as Andre what you said. It's Silent Hill. I think has like some of the best like aesthetic in general for at least in my taste for Silent Hill. I like the whole like everything is filled with rust and everything. It feels like really cool and everything. Um, I don't know. Really, every time I get to replay Silent Hill 3, which is still my favorite Silent Hill of all, um, the lakeside amusement park just really has something to it, like the creepiness. Everything is filled with darkness, but everything is also rusted. I don't know, the whole aesthetic of it just gives a different feeling. I don't know, it just the uncertainty of it about what is like on the next door or on the next place or on the next corner, even like the haunted house in there, it's just like I don't know, they have like their own specific charm to it. I don't know if that will be like the best way to call it, but also the way that Silent Hill 3 starts, just like because it starts exactly with that, with the amusement park, which turns out to be like a nightmare of Heather, and then you wake up in the shopping center in the mall, and the mall. I don't know. I just simply love that whole thing. It really feels a lot. I really like the whole aesthetic of like liminal spaces and stuff like that, and really a a mall, a shopping center that feels like it's totally abandoned. I don't know. It has just like a sort of liminal style to it. It feels really like unreal, if that's a way to call it. Like seeing a place that you see normally, like being filled with everyone, with everybody, with people, shops, voices, and everything, just like everybody just normally driving through. But then when you see the place like at night, or even the place is like fairly lit and stuff like that, and you see everything alone, lonely, there's no light there, there's a feeling that you get there that something is wrong. And I think that's a feeling that most of the locations of Silent Hill 3 actually work perfectly well, because it's just that feeling that there's something wrong. You don't know what is wrong. I mean, it's Silent Hill, you know that there's gonna be like a lot of monsters and stuff like that. But there's something special about that, about feeling just like, oh, something is weird, something is off. And your brain is telling you like, all right, I don't know what is wrong, but something is wrong here. And if you have ever been to like a shopping center or like a mall, and you leave like later at the night, you know that feeling. You know the feeling of being like, all right, I'm alone at this place, nobody's here, something seems off. Maybe there's nothing off, but there's something off. And also, I will say that one of my other favorites is Midwich Elementary School. I think it's just like one of the most iconic places, at least in the whole of Silent Hill 1. I don't know what it has, but it's also the fact that maybe we have been so desensitized for horror that schools feel really weird. All right, so an abandoned school really feels amazing. So yeah, I think those will be my most favorite places.
What about least favorite? If you have any least favorites.
If I have a least favorite, I will say maybe the Toluca Lake Hotel, because I don't know, it's a whole labyrinth that doesn't really feel that creepy. It just feels like abandoned, but I don't think it has the same kind of feeling. And I will say also maybe the lighthouse in Silent Hill 1. I also don't know. I just feel that it's something off about it. Like I feel that it doesn't fit so much into it. At least in my own taste. And also, I will have to say this: fuck the sewers of Silent Hill 1. I hate them. I hate them so much. Those are my least favorites of all.
All right, next up is Mr. Drillbit. What do you have to add to this Halo of the Sun, my friend?
Yes, for favorites.
Yes.
I mean, that's a tough one. There's a lot of ones I like. I mean, I guess it might be a bit of a controversial opinion, but I do like the hotel room from Silent Hill 4 a lot, especially how it changes throughout the game. That's a good location. And also how there's the hole in the bathroom. That's how you like transfer to different areas, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I guess. I also I know not many people talk about shattered dimension, not dimensions, shattered memories. I'm thinking of Spider-Man. But yeah, I like the school. I like the school area in that game, and mainly because that it starts to become covered with ice. Ice themed horror games aren't really something you see that often. That looked good. And probably like everyone else said, the lake and also the theme park and Silent Hill 3 and the haunted mansion. That was really cool. It's like one of the scariest parts in the series for sure. As for least favorite, I guess anything from Downpour, and I get really anything just from Downpour. Honestly, I don't really care for them that much. Silent Hill 1, I don't mind too much, except the sewer, but that's about it. Yeah, I think that's and I think that's all I got for now.
It's fine. I see. It's also fine to label the entire game as a backtracking slog. So if you feel that way, that is totally normal. Next, we're gonna move on to Mr. Lanos. So Lanos, what about your favorites, and then after that, least favorites?
All right. Well, I'll first start off with just to kind of chime in as well. I really did enjoy the apartment in Silent Hill 4. The changes, being able to the spying on your neighbors as you can't get out is incredibly creepy. And especially when you can't do anything and you're just watching all these things around you and you're just kind of locked in for a long time. So that one was a very good level design. I know it's controversial because of the ghost, because that kind of ruined it for a lot of people, but it was a great idea. And being locked in a room is a scary thought. I would say also the Silent Hill 2 prison was a great level. It's already an oppressive area, but also putting monsters in there, it just ups up the little bit of the nightmare of it in general. And so that was like, for me, it was like a much creepier part of the game. I would also have to agree on the Blue Creek apartments, especially when you meet Pyramid Head for the very first time. Like later on, you learn, like, obviously they're a little bit more harmless, but for the very first time you meet them, it is scary as hell. Or like when you hear like the scream when you go to check out the TV with that. I'm trying to remember specifically because I just did a run of this not too often, but you go back into the room and there's a person there and they're obviously dead now. And you're just like, what the hell just happened? I would also have to say, like, the school in general in Silent Hill 1 was just creepy. My God, especially like the bathroom when you're hearing the girl crying or the cat in the locker room. That got to me a little bit. I'm like, oh my God, why? And trying to think, the amusement park, I think everyone agrees that is a very good level design, and it's a really good start to 3. So for me, that was a really good one. But also the Nightmare Hospital in Silent Hill 3. My God, I think it's maybe because I was in a hospital a lot when I was younger, but like when I played those, especially in the other world, it gets really creepy. Ugh. So yeah, I think those would be like my top 5.
What about your least favorites?
Oh God. Okay. So I'll try to be brief a little bit. I love Silent Hill 4, but some of the level design was very, very frustrating. Like Eileen, the escort was Eileen through the sewers, or just 80 sewer level in Silent Hill in general. I don't know why. It should be a great level design, but they just always seem to make you just frustrated. The Oak Grove Sanitarium in Origins, it like had such potential, but it was just like a slog forever. I actually will. There's the subway section with the Wallman and Silent Hill 3 that was very, very frustrating, but also just like, no, just fuck that level. And then I'm trying to think. I would say I like Homecoming, but like the cemetery, especially when you're like going back and forth between the junkyard and the houses, it's just like, it's just so much backtracking, and it literally adds to nothing really other than just backtracking back and forth. And then probably the forest in Silent Hill 4. Again, I love that game and it had some great ideas, but there's so much backtracking, and the forest is probably the worst of them.
And I guess I guess everyone's gonna either hate the forest or Silent Hill backtracking. It's a lot on my list, but Max, it is your turn. How do you feel about the best and worst stages within the Silent Hill franchise?
It is my job to try to be a shimmer of positivity. For the best list, I didn't really have like one in particular that I wanted to pick so much as I went to different games and just asked which ones were my favorite. So for the first one, for Silent Hill 1, I would have to give it to the Midwich Elementary School. I will admit there is some bias because I play Dead by Daylight a lot, and that got converted to a stage there, and I adore it, but the whispers, the crying, the cat, hearing children laughter or running, and like, sure, the little shadow men themselves weren't actually that scary, but there's a lot of really creepy imagery all throughout the school, especially when it turned over to the other world, and it kind of represented, I don't know if I should say exactly like the more culty nature of what happens a lot in Silent Hill, especially when you meet the one nun, but it does show like this creeping dread throughout the whole thing that I absolutely adored. And also, yeah, Dead by Daylight kind of makes me a little biased towards it. For 2, a lot of people brought up The Apartment, which is one I was going to bring up just because the isolation and that first sighting of Pyramid Head I will always adore, even though my game glitched out, so it made him almost like pinstriped. But what I wanted to bring up for 2 was actually the hospital with like, I know the nurses are like the stereotypical, they're one of the hallmarks of the games, but it always just creeped me out seeing them and like clearly horrible experiments being done to people. And I always say Mary or Maria wrong, so I'm just gonna say that outright. But seeing her get sick over time and needing to lay down, kind of being I guess a foreshadowing for what she truly represents, I think was just very well done. For 3, I kind of have to echo what was brought up before between the amusement park and the mall. I really did like the mall because I think it did a great job of encapsulating the you have no clue what's going on and you're just going. And sure, it's fun to make fun of the it's bread thing, but I think the amusement park does it more for me because the overall, I'm trying to think of the game. There's a game called Gauntlet Dark Legacy that has like a carnival world that's like a twisted version. And when I played Silent Hill 3 for the first time, that's what clicked with me. How it's clearly a place of fun, but turned towards like rust and spikes and horrible and awful. And also all the little individual places. The swing rocket, I have it on the wiki, that you fight the shadow version or blood version, whatever you want to call yourself. The fortune house and the haunted mansion with like the weird eerie voices that were following you around and like trying to scare you, but then actual things would come and scare you too. I just thought those were an absolute delight. For 4, I also want to say the apartment itself. It's weird that you spy on people. It kind of makes you question, I always forget his name, Henry. But yeah, Murphy is the other game. But it's always kind of weird that you do spy on people. I don't know what that speaks on for him, but it does create this odd sense of like, I don't want to use the word possession, but like your home in that game is the one place you heal. It's the one place you're safe. So seeing it corrupt over time, seeing it change, checking on everything almost obsessively or desperately, I think really adds something. And then when it starts going to hell, like literally, it feels like such an invasion of privacy that I think it's really special. Not to mention all the weird random things that can happen when you look at the peephole, when you stare at I believe her name is Eileen. I could be wrong about that. When you stare at Eileen, when you like just look around, all the weird, creepy things I think just nailed making you feel unsafe. And then lastly, for the good ones, for Downpour, I actually maybe it's because I just got off of I got off of Homecoming when I played Downpour, and I never watched the movies, so a lot of context for Homecoming I didn't understand. I actually really enjoyed Downpour, and I would want to put Saint Maria's Monastery on there. That place had the doll enemies, which they effectively threw like invisible shadows at you. There was a lot of interesting visuals with, depending on different parts of the monastery you were in, was almost entirely different climates with tornadoes, all sorts of like creepy imagery and different things, small effects, people that are being hung and then disappeared, popping in and out, using the black light to discover different things. I think there's just a lot of really well thought out and scary factor in there. Even with the boogeyman, who in some ways, yeah, he is kind of a Pyramid Head ripoff, but he really did add a lot to it. Sorry, I do that as a joke. For the negative ones, though, I had a much harder time coming up with negative, with stages I look poorly at. I think the big thing for me, and this is more of a poke at like Silent Hill in general, like everyone said, backtracking is the worst. No one likes backtracking. But also sucks is stages that have like respawning enemies and things that are designed just to tax you, especially with especially when you have limited resources. The big example of this, and I think it's a fair criticism, is with 4, in that the ghosts, unless you use a specific item, which you never know when to use it, they will tax you for your health. You go back to your home, and then eventually your home stops healing you. And it just creates this taxing, horrible process. So many of the sewer levels, the forests were brought up. I think that's totally fair. Anytime the escorting, I didn't have as much problems with, but just backtracking, getting lost and not being sure what you're doing, which Homecoming, that happened to me a lot in, and just taxation of resources, I think created the worst stage for me. Unfortunately, I'm not able to point a finger at which one did that for me the most, but I'm sure if you asked me at the time, I'd be like, this stage freaking sucks, and let me tell you why. But at this current moment, I'm looking back with rose-tinted glasses.
So, Max, are you done on your worst choices?
Yes.
All right, next
I
up,
apologize for rambling.
I might have a very special surprise because we have not hit an hour, actually. So I might re-roll the podcast after I go, and I might say best and worst protagonists. That might happen tonight.
Oh, God.
But
No objections from me.
That could work. I'd be down for that, actually.
But we gotta let JoJo do his stages. So JoJo, best and worst stages. It is your turn.
Okie dokie. I've got a few best and worst. I got maybe 3 or 4 for each. Let's start with my first favorites. My first favorite, I mean not my absolute favorite, but I absolutely love it, is the actual apartment building in the apartment world, I should say, in Silent Hill 4. I love it because there's lots of exploration, and each room that you explore, besides having like, items you could find that can keep you going, each one shows like different aspects of the lives of the people who lived in them. Like there's a family that has a bunch of kids in it. You go in their room, there's a bunch of bunk beds, and there's all kinds of scribbling on the wall that looks so crazy that if you try to examine it, it won't let you. Um, there's that one of the guy who made all those paintings that give you, insight on the people who lived in it. And then there's that lady. There's that lady that has. This is going to be a little bit graphic, what I'm about to say. The body of a dead cat inside of it, wrapped in bloody jeans from someone who got the shit kicked out of him. And because this lady had her cat die because someone shot him, and she couldn't bear to bury the body, so she just wrapped it in jeans and kept it in her fridge. Another environment that another stage in Silent Hill series that I absolutely loved, probably I would have to say the Brookhaven amusement park, Brookhaven Hospital, mainly because that's the first time we see a mental hospital in Silent Hill, and I think it's one of the few times they did like how to make a scary mental hospital work, because it's a hospital of some kind. It's like that subliminal spaces thing, like the back rooms that I forgot who mentioned that earlier, the subliminal spaces, but like when you go to a hospital, you expect there to at least be people who are concerned about you, can care for you, can heal you, if you can afford it or whatnot. And in this place, it's all dilapidated, it's all hostile, and there's all kinds of creepy effects going on. Like, I don't know if you listen to like, there's like lots of places you hear like the stairwell, you hear the crying coming from the basement. That one freaked me out. And another one I would have to say before I do my last one for favorites is I'd have to say Silent Hill 2. I'm doing Silent Hill 2 a lot. Silent Hill 2's what do you call it? The prison. The prison. I really, really love the prison because, again, it's a really scary prison with all kinds of stuff going around, so much atmosphere that it's just like I think that's some of Akira Yamaoka's best sound work is in the prison. And like when you're in the area with the scaffolding with the 3 hangings, like you could hear a horse run around the place, even though there's no horse to be found, implying that people were drawn and quartered there, which is kind of horrifying. And it does quite possibly my all-time favorite like jump scare of all time, because it's like a jump scare done properly. I'm sure some of you played Silent Hill 2 are familiar with it when you knock on the door of the stall in the women's restroom in the prison. Like that is my favorite jump scare. I actually got my roommate with that one. As for my favorite place, I want to do one honorable mention, Nowhere from Silent Hill 1, just because it's a culmination of just about everything that you've went through, and it feels like it's a big test of your mettle, a big test of your courage and sanity, and I absolutely love it. As for my favorite place, I'm going to have to say what I think a couple people said here so far, Room 302 itself, mainly because of all the story you get in it while you're in there, and how it sort of becomes like a haven for you, because when you start playing it, when you go through the little holes to go back to your apartment, like if you've taken damage, your health slowly, regens while you're in there. And the further you play the game, the slower that health regen happens until it stops completely. And at that point, that's when all the hostility comes in place. And, you obviously can't open the windows. You can't open the door. Nobody from the other side of the door can hear you. How you're doing the voyeurism not creeping, but peeping in on Eileen, watching through the peephole of your door, like almost like you're a prison in a way. And as the game got further, you kept getting hauntings, which they weren't really hard to deal with. You just had to make sure to put your candles and your medallions in the right places. And what I really liked about Room 302 is as you play and you like investigated the stuff like the shower, the toilet, the sink, the door, the shoes, like the commentary that's on the bottom of the screen changes the further you play. And the further you play, the ramblings sound, more crazy. Like James says, Henry says, these aren't my shoes. When did I buy them? Or when did I buy these books? When did I put this picture here? It makes you wonder if, like, your grip on reality is breaking from this room. Those are my favorites. Another honorable mention I have to say is the St. Joseph's Hospital, because it got really close to being like dreams I had as a child, including the infamous gigantic head in the hospital. Only in my dream, The head was like of a man with a mustache. If you want to analyze that, go ahead. My least favorites. Oh boy, here we go. My least favorites would probably have to be the Silent Hill 1 sewer, just because it's because it just feels like an ordinary sewer level. Now granted, sewers are very dark and unpleasant places to be, fitting for Silent Hill, but in Silent Hill they didn't do anything to turn the creepiness up to 11 other than put those little lizard monster things in there and have your radio not work. Another least favorite section from Silent Hill 4, the second half of the water prison, mainly because you had to figure out where to put Eileen so you can jump through the hole and then come back and get her with the rotating part. I mean, the water prison was cooler in the first part. Another one I did not like was, again, Silent Hill 4, the second visit to the building world, because, oh my god, I hated how you had to backtrack so much and go to all these little places, and it's like not clear if you're on the right floor or not unless you use the elevator just right, and you got to use another elevator to get to other parts. I didn't like that. And my least favorites, the Silent Hill Homecoming sewer. Not because it was hard, it was actually easy to get through. Not because the monsters you had to deal with were hard. They're in fact pretty easy. You can deal with almost all of them with like the axe or the pipe, whichever you want. It's just that they have all of these ammo pickups, but because the game's limited ammo capacity, like you can't pick any of them up. Same thing with all these health items. And once you get out of the sewer, you fight, I think it was called the Schism, that big monster, and it eats through all your ammo, and it does so much damage that you really wish you could have been able to pick up all that ammo and all those health items. And now you can't go back to get them, because I think after you beat this guy, you just go on to the next part of the game. You can't go back. All those helpful healing items, helpful ammo, gone. It was very, very bad.
And is that it, Jojo, for you?
Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, so it is my turn. I will try to make this very quick, but for my favorites, I have to say what everyone else has been saying, Room 302, because it is very dynamic in terms of everything they do, from the events to the ghost babies in the wall, and you see how your entire apartment is changing, and along with it is Henry's like sanity, because he's going crazy. I remember the floating heads outside. It's so much going on in here that is absolutely batshit insane. The bloody slippers, everything, that you just keep coming back for more. You want to see what other haunting is going to occur that will blow your mind and scare the shit out of you. Next, for a favorite is the Midwich Elementary School. I think this place was kind of terrifying, and it also laid the blueprint for seeing the story context of Alyssa being bullied. And I thought that was like very, very dark subject matter, as well as them introducing this and sort of having this element saying we're gonna go here with child bullying, as well as have this be a context element of the gray children roaming around that you have to dispose of. Yeah, it's a pretty creepy place. Also, the cat in the locker, that sort of jump scare that happens where it's the loud bloody locker and you hear the cat being eaten. Yeah, it's not a pretty sight. Next up is the shopping mall. I think this was a great intro level to Silent Hill and Silent Hill 3, mainly because it's a big area, wide spaces, and there's a bunch of monsters roaming around, but it really gets you sort of acquainted with what to expect with the beginning of the game. I think when you see that giant creature eating that person in the store, it starts to really sink in that this is a surreal place. I don't want to be here. I know it's for consumerism, but I just want to get the fuck out as soon as I possibly can. And creating that sense of tension and dread with like all the different creatures in one space was a great way to sort of say, hey, this is what you're getting into. This is what you have to deal with. This is how you have to maneuver around the environment. Next up is Brookhaven Hospital from Silent Hill 2. I think it is dark, mysterious, and seeing all the mental patient stuff and everything they did with the notes and how there might be some sort of violence going on with how they treated some of the inmates and everything in the background. I thought that was great. Also, the encounter with Mr. Pyramid Head on the roof and, you know, falling back in and sort of exploring the area from there. I thought that was super great. It's also like where a lot of the first super big story beats happen, because I think this is where like Maria has her first death and James has to cope in the elevator, and it's just that silent sort of camera angle of him in the elevator, and the music starts creeping in as he has failed his objective with caring for this woman. I thought that was some very powerful stuff that they were illustrating in this hospital, so that's why I remember it a lot. Last favorite is the Borley Haunted Mansion, which is part of the amusement park from Silent Hill 3. I think it's a no-brainer that's having a sort of kids attraction be the focal point of horror is one of the best things they could have done, especially with the Haunted Mansion commentator sort of saying all these weird things like, oh, this trap wasn't supposed to stop right here once the spike ceiling almost falls on you. So it's like, yeah, he's really trying to kill you, and making a point that while he is in this happy, gleeful mood, that he wants you dead. So I think that adds to the atmosphere a whole lot, as well as the hanging man that you see, and he says, "That's Danny," in a monotone voice. So it's like, it's a surreal, crazy feeling the second that you walk in there. You're trying to escape all these traps going on and the red mist and everything. Least favorites, I'm gonna make this super quick. I did not like any of the Otherworld segments in Downpour. I thought they were too well illuminated, that they told you where to go. There was no sense of isolation, no sense of being lost. It just pointed everything out to you on the screen, and I don't like that game design. I don't find it scary. I didn't find it thrilling whatsoever. Next up is the sewers. As Jojo said, nothing really significant happens down here. Just a bunch of lizard men. They come out with their dicks out and they try to kill you, and it's nothing, you know, fun in terms of how the gameplay and the scares and the core elements work. You're just running around to get keys and that's it. And I think they could have done a lot more with that area. There's like really not even any super dynamic story events down here, so that was a waste of opportunity. Next up is, it might be controversial saying this, but I did not like St. Jerome's Hospital in Silent Hill 4. I thought that the hospital in Silent Hill 4 was not good, because you had, while you did have the Eileen head, and that was pretty freaky, there's also the hallway with the wheelchairs, and trying to maneuver around them in the Otherworld version is very annoying. Highly annoying, because if you get tapped by them one time, you're out and you get knocked down. Also, the burping nurses kind of took me out of the atmosphere as well, because the sound that they make is incredibly stupid. So I was more or less laughing at that segment than being scared by it, and that's never really good for me in terms of subjective horror. The next two stages, I'm just gonna list those off because everyone already knows is more Silent Hill 4. So backtracking to the subway with Eileen is annoying, because once again you're with her, and then you have Cynthia the ghost. She spawns and she's chasing you, and then you have to get the tokens in order to escape the area. And I'm just like, it's so much busy work down here that like having a you know, escort makes it worse, because you have to do so much just to get out of there, and it's just not entertaining in the slightest to me. And then there's the forest where you have my boy Walter coming at you with like 2 dual pistols, and you're not having a good time. And it's it feels like it just drags on for way too long, more than it needs to be. Like, it overstays its welcome. I did like the fact that you could go to the graves covered in blood, and then Eileen will sort of talk about it, because I think Henry can't read the text. That's the only thing I found that was like super fascinating, in my opinion, that the player tried to do something, they couldn't read it, but you have the secondary character giving you more context. That's the only like positive merit I will really give it. But outside of that, you have to deal with more busy work, and that's where it gets readily annoying for me. But overall, it does have a positive to it, which is, like I said, context and exposition. So that is my list done. Now what we're gonna do is something special. So as I said earlier, we're gonna re-roll the podcast and sort of talk about favorite protagonists and least favorite protagonists, and then we will end it from there. So Andre, what's your favorite protag, least favorite protag?
Very great question. Okay, so in terms of favorite protagonists, I'll go by really fast. James Sunderland definitely takes the cake for me for favorite, because I very relate to how socially awkward he can be, especially early on in the game when when he talks to Angela, and he's got a lot of guilt. Like, he's got a lot sort of stored inside of him that he doesn't want to like share with people, and I totally can relate with that. And I do kind of like throughout the game, he's at least trying to help people with their problems, like Eddie and um, what's her name, Angela, and he wants to help him, but at the same time, he isn't able to, and the only thing James is able to do is sort of like, I guess, reassure them. And granted, even though it doesn't work, and James has his own demons to deal with, he still keeps trucking along to figure out what happened to his wife. And once you figure out that James killed her, it kind of recontextualizes pretty much everything from like that layer that was pretty much like a figment of of his imagination. And especially with his relationship with Maria and Mary, where Maria, who's really this idealized version of Mary, or at least this fake version. So James realizes, no, I need to accept my guilt. I can't just keep running away from my past. So he confronts Pyramid Head, who is a manifestation of his guilt. And pretty much with that, the endings with James do vary. I resonated the most with Leave, because it's more like, I kind of like it in stories where a character realizes that they've made a lot of mistakes and that they want to atone. So James is like, I need to accept this guilt for who I am. And to move forward, I really should be a better person. And with that, he sort of adopts Laura and leaves Silent Hill. Another protagonist that I do really like, Heather Mason from Silent Hill 3. Even though she might seem annoying to some people, I do think her snarky attitude's pretty refreshing, especially where other characters they're a lot more stoic, serious. I do really like that. As for worst protagonist, well, oh boy, well, I know JoJo knows this. Probably Alex from Silent Hill Homecoming. Now, Alex's whole story on paper is interesting. Like, he's from the war, you know, he's sort of like a war vet suffering from supposed PTSD. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. However, it falls apart when you realize that his story is literally just a rehash of James from Silent Hill 2, albeit less impact, because the reason why James's story works so well is it had really good foreshadowing, and James' personality had very like subtle hints to what was going on deep inside and was revealed later. For Alex, it's kind of like they try to make it this huge twist, but it just kind of falls apart because you don't really even know Alex's family too well, aside from the fact they just want to sacrifice him, and they're just pretty much complete like douchebags to him. And his brother Josh honestly comes off more of a brat than like sympathetic. Where at least with Mary, like when she got sick, she was abusive, Graham, but at the same time, she did genuinely regret being abusive to James in the Leave ending, and also Water. And so it's like with that, you know, Alex is just really a very bland character, and I think what's kind of funny actually about him is trying to think. I think he made a cameo in Book of Memories. I'm not sure because I know Murphy did, which I don't think Murphy's a terrible protagonist. Like Dumbledore has a lot of problems, but I actually think the story has some really good ideas to it. It's just Murphy, he really deserved a lot better for what they were given, for what he was given. But yeah, that's pretty much my long-winded answer on protagonist.
All right, Bernie, it's your turn.
Sure. I mean, Silent Hill has like a really big variety of characters, but if I had to choose on a specific one, I will say that my favorite is Travis from Silent Hill Origins. At least to me, I think he has some of like the most realistic, or at least to me, some of his struggles or traumas kind of like like I understand him in a really good way. I mean, he's a truck driver and everything, but once you play the game, you see that he had a lot of problems with like his parents, his upbringing, and everything. He's not even someone who is like he isn't bad really, like he doesn't have like any bad intentions or anything. He just knows that he has trauma, and I like that about like his characters, because contrary to a lot of the other protagonists in the games, everyone has like, oh, I did something bad and now things bad are happening to me. But for Travis, he's just like, no, I just like tried to help somebody and I got involved in the whole cult shit and stuff like that. So I think he's one of the best characters, at least for me, because of that. He really seems like a normal person, and it really shows a lot about like how trauma or depression can be, because he seems like that. He seems a normal guy, a truck driver, just like normally going by life, and then you discover that there's like a lot of dark stuff in his past. So I really like him that way. I feel that he's one of the most real characters in the whole franchise. One of the most. I mean, there are others, but he's a really good one. And for my least favorite, I will have to like diverge here a little bit, but I really hate Harry Mason, but in the Shattered Memories incarnation, because you might think like, hey, it's a protagonist and stuff like that, but no, he's always a dick. And when once you start discovering like the past and everything that is going on with that, you see that he was always a dick. It doesn't matter which of the endings like you get in Silent Hill Shattered Memories, but you see that he was like an asshole from the beginning. Oh, in one ending, he's divorcing from his wife. He said to like his daughter, like, "Oh, this is not your fault, sweetie." That's the worst thing that you can say to a child in the middle of a divorce. You get another ending. Oh, he was just like an alcoholic. Oh, you get another ending. Oh, he was just like banging a lot of women. You get another ending. Oh, you see that he's just like a weak guy who can't go for himself. So he is really like that in that way, contrary to the original Harry Mason, which, I mean, he loved his daughter and he fought until the end to save her. This guy just like, I don't know what to do. Like, oh, boobies, and it's just like, what the fuck is wrong with that? I don't like him in that version. I like Shattered Memories, but I can't stand his character in that way. So yeah, that's my most favorite and least favorite protagonist.
Next up is Mr. Drillbit.
Oh, yeah, I was actually surprised someone picked Travis because he's not really talked about that much. Especially since it's a PSP game and a prequel, but I think it's a good game. I'd recommend people play Origins or Zero with in Japan. But yeah, as for favorite and least favorite, I don't know. It's hard because I'd say it's between Harry or Heather. Because Harry's really just, he was just meant to be like the foil to like your average RE protagonist. He's not like an agent. He's not like an agent or anything. He's just a dad looking for his daughter, and yeah, that's what drives the plot along. And he goes through all that hell just to bring her back. And it's even more gut wrenching once you learn of his fate in 3. and which is kind of what gives like Heather more depth in her character. So I'd say Heather has more of the edge.
Did you already list off your least favorite?
Yeah, least favorite. Let me think for a second.
Just say games post Team Silent. That's all you got to say.
Yeah, true, but that would be a little too easy, honestly. I guess maybe like well, I guess I'll just say Alex because even though I like the idea of a soldier coming back and the whole dealing with PTSD and stuff, it's kind of a bit half baked, especially with the twist. I wasn't a fan of it. I'd still say, but yeah, between that and Shattered Memories, I'd still say I don't care. I don't. Alex is probably my least favorite.
All right, so next up is Lanos. Lanos?
There we go. I had done mute.
That's cool.
Okay, I actually kind of a tied between for favorite protagonists. One is Heather. Heather was just a refreshing character in comparison to like they're all supposed to be everyday people, but Heather just had like this snark to their dialogue and actually reacted a little bit more to their surroundings, unlike sometimes James wouldn't. And it's just like, you just stuck your hand in a hole and I don't even know why. Why are you doing that? But Heather like reacted to the world and had so many descriptions on bread. But it was just a refreshing character and actually had a more well-rounded as in general. And also might be controversial, but I liked Henry. Henry was that true introvert that, yeah, they didn't react to everything, but it was just, if you really kind of dig down to how they were one of those people with like that personality construct where they weren't able to really kind of verbally describe how they felt, which is kind of a thing. And it's just more of an everyday person who didn't go to Silent Hill on purpose. There wasn't a reasoning for it. He just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and just kind of got stuck into like Henry's like machinations. And when he did come across people, he tried to help them as much as he could. And just his reactions to some things was just beyond comical, because it's just like, if you really see all this horrifying things, just his reaction was just, for me, it was something that I could attach to. And he was a very socially awkward introvert. So it was just like, I don't see a lot of introverted characters that tend to end up in these things. There's always like someone who's a little heroic or something else, even if they are heroic or like a everyday person. So for me, it's a tie between those two. But I'm on the worst. I'm actually going to have to go on the opposite spectrum. I was not big of a fan of Travis. And it's not because they didn't have an interesting character or like kind of a backdrop to them. It's just because the game itself was working against them. It tended, for a lot of focus that Silent Hill is supposed to be on like their psyche and their backgrounds and who they are. It's more, they took the background to the whole story itself while setting up Alessa. It just seemed a little too on the nose for him, but yet he faded to the background. So it was really hard to attach to his character, even though he had a traumatic backstory. It just, he kind of took a backseat to the whole game, which for being a protagonist, that shouldn't really happen. So, but I guess that's what happens sometimes when you westernize some of these games. But that's just me. Like, for me, it was Travis.
All right, Max, your turn.
So for me, our favorite protagonist, or if I could speak correctly, without a doubt, is Heather or Cheryl. I always get it confused, and once again, I blame Dead by Daylight. But the amount of sarcasm and sass from every item description, from every like looking at the environment, how she will straight up yell at I forget her name, but the main antagonist that like follows her around and essentially tries to rebirth God and everything. The fact that she yells at her, she yells at everyone. Like there's like refreshing is such a good word for it, because not only is she like, I don't know why I'm here, I don't know what's going on, but screw you, screw all these people, screw these nightmares. And it just was a lot of fun. There was a lot of energy, and I just absolutely adored playing as her. Because yes, things are creepy, but like things are creepy and scary, but I also recognize like people in the face of a lot of fear sometimes will come back with just like visceral anger of like, no, screw you, we're gonna do this, as they like fight through their trauma. And I feel like you get, obviously there's still a lot of very like contemplative, sad, scary moments with Heather, but you really do feel that as well. And I absolutely love that, because a lot of the times without realizing it, I was matching her energy as she was trying to take out her demons. For least favorite protagonist, though, I'm gonna be honest, I had a really hard time deciding them, because like it kind of went back and forth between Harry and Alex, which I don't want to pick on Harry too much, because so the reason I like Heather so much is because she exudes so much personality. Because you very clearly know her motives, you know what's going on. She's on a track for revenge, and she's going to get it. She just wants to stop all this craziness from happening. It's very clear. With Harry, and granted, it might be, limitations of the time, limitations of storytelling, technology. To me, he felt very flat. Whereas, like, what is your personality? Have you seen my daughter? What is your goal in life? Have you seen my daughter? What is your belief systems on this? Have you seen, like, there didn't seem to be much going on with him. And I recognize it was expanded more, like seeing him get killed in the third one was heartbreaking, but he felt very flat. While with Alex, it was mentioned before that he did kind of come off as bratty, and he also kind of forgettable in a lot of ways. Like, I did not feel very much need to care for him, as opposed to like Henry and Murphy and James, who like are going through some stuff and you can see this growth and change through them. I didn't really feel that much of a change with Harry, and I didn't really care that much about Alex. So I have a hard time choosing between those two. But that's all offset by Heather, who just a beacon of color and energy, even while she's like going through these different horrible experiences. It was just great to play as her. And even like, I still can't get over, like, Bread is a good example. Basic descriptions of things. You don't just like see the description of it and read it like in a very factual. You can hear her voice in everything she does and how she interacts with people. It's awesome.
Jojo, it's your turn.
Okay. For protagonists, I would say my favorite is I'm probably kind of, I don't know if anyone, I know some people said this was one of their least favorites, but this is my most favorite. The Silent Hill 1 version of Harry, mainly because he takes no guff. He has to go through everything. Like, he's probably, I would say, other than maybe Heather, probably one of the more pure protagonists, because like when you look at characters like James, or maybe a little bit Henry, or Alex, or even Murphy, in a way, like you could say Harry's goals and motivations are probably, I would say, the purest, because all he's really wanting to do is protect his daughter, keep her safe. He doesn't care about the cult. He'll fight through all these monsters to do it. Whereas like characters like James, and maybe to a certain extent like Henry and stuff, will have like somewhat selfish motivations, like how, because how James has his dark past involving his wife, and how Henry kind of refuses to connect with people, and how he's kind of forced to with Eileen. That's why I really liked Henry a lot. I'm just gonna be brief here. My least favorite would have to be Murphy, mainly because he's bland and boring. Like I didn't like how all he really, like, he just grunts whenever he talks. He speaks for the player instead of letting the player think for themselves. And he's like he's another guilty person, kind of like James too. And I just did not like Murphy very much. Murphy's kind of, like I said, Murphy's just bland. He's just a guy who went to prison, for what he did, even though you can't really blame him for what he did, depending on what ending he got. So it really makes his backstory ambiguous. His backstory changes depending on how you play the game. That just feels weird. Like the ending should show how what happened in the past is dealt with, like they did with 2. That was another reason I didn't like Murphy, because his backstory isn't even concrete. Like it changes depending on what ending he gets. So yeah, that's my most favorite, least favorite protagonists.
All right, I will make mine really quick and then we will end this podcast. So, it's a hard time picking between favorites for me as opposed to least favorite because I already know who that is. But I will just say James, because granted, he does some very silly, asinine things with poking his hand in certain places where it doesn't belong, and jumping through holes with no like sort of thought process behind it, as opposed to the consequence, of dying from there. But I'm thinking maybe that's the point. Maybe this symbolized death for James, and the fact that he's willing to go through all this just to get to Mary while having some ulterior motive. So I kind of like that a lot, and I like the fact that he is emotionally complex with everything that is punishing him, because it's all like his version of Silent Hill is like all an amalgamation of like everything that he wants and desires at the same time, but he knows he can't have it. So the nurses are like all looted up, or he sees Mary constantly because he cares about her, but he knows that he put her out of her misery because of that illness that she had. So it's all indicative of the character and how they're feeling, and I think that's like the first time when we got to that point that it was written so good. So I like that trauma being conveyed to us as we opened up Silent Hill 2, and James is a big byproduct of that. If I were to say a character that I disliked, I wouldn't say like I super hate him or anything, but I would say Murphy, because as a prisoner, and you could think of the horrific things they could do with something like that in terms of a story or in terms of crafting something around that, it just fell flat. And it kind of felt like it was an imitator of, oh, we got the boogeyman that is basically his version of Pyramid Head punishing him. And it's something where it's like rinse and repeat. We've seen this before time and time again, relating to his character and everything. And his performance really doesn't stand out. Sure, he might say something funny like once in a blue moon when I played Downpour, and that's it. Basically, his interactions with I forget her name too, Anne or whatever, sometimes they're hilarious because it's like two people he's trying not to be killed by her, but he's being shot at, and it's funny. So yeah, his interactions with the cop lady are just absolutely bonkers at times in that game. But considering the story of what they could have done with that character and his motivations and everything, and he's in the prison to kill a guy, it's like we all seen it before, and I don't like that. I would prefer something like original for that character, and it didn't get migrated well in my opinion. I felt like that was one of the most wasted potential things ever they could have done, next to Alex, which is also like war veteran guy coming from the war. He's seen some shit. I mean, Silent Hill itself, the entire concept and premise was inspired by Jacob's Ladder, and having those sort of war PTSD flashbacks, and they could have really dived deep into that, but it just migrated to my family sucks and I have to sort of uncover the mystery, and that's it. And it felt like it could have been like most of these characters from the post Team Silent era, they just suffer from not having a more illustrated story, even though the concept and setup for them is quite impressive. Like, it's not bad. but the execution was. So that's why they kind of suffer for that. But that's my favorite and least favorite so far. So I think we're gonna wrap up this podcast. Any sort of interjections before we sign out and stuff that people wanted to mention?
You forgot Bobby Ricks, the DJ from Downpour.
Oh,
Oh man,
oh
dude,
man.
that whole side quest with him was so dumb. Like, it really made no sense. Like, how does Silent Hill have a DJ? It's so dumb.
Oh, now I remember.
You know, the
that.
the town's dark power needed a DJ. How else are you gonna listen to old classic music?
He wanted to drop
Conjure
a
it?
beat. He wanted to drop a beat on him, and that's exactly. Yeah, that I remember that. That's really just dumb. I know some of the side missions, and I didn't like the Kaufman side quest too much because I felt like it was a lot of busy work, but at least it led to something because that's how you get the good plus endings and whatnot. Even though it was super long, this is just absolutely stupid in terms of the premise and the town itself. Like, why would this need to happen?
Yeah, Downpour story just makes really zero sense whatsoever because like what they sent, like what the guy sent in the chat, like I don't really like it when stories have like when they sort of have like, you know, your choices sort of matter or something like that, when they don't really add up to like the actual story.
Yeah, I haven't.
I get so mad because it had so much potential and yet like was just thrown away for just that concept. It made no sense to me.
Yeah.
I never played Shattered Memories, but I do remember people were saying that the profile aspect was kind of like lackluster. It was cool seeing like how some of the characters changed depending on your actions in terms of wardrobe and everything, but if it really didn't ultimately matter at the end, it's weird that they sort of even tried to do something like that, even though the premise itself sounds interesting. Just if it didn't go anywhere, then what's the point, you know?
Yeah, like I said before, like I'm just not a fan of games where they do choices and they just don't really matter too much in the long run.
I think it
And,
would have
like-
been. Oh, good.
I was gonna say, and most Silent Hill games were based purely on the psyche of the character and us going through like their trauma or any other manner of things like that. And with something so fluid as that, it just made no sense in contrast to what like the series was all about, is what was supposed to separate it from most of the things out there at that point. So it just felt superfluous.
Yeah, I think if it was something where if you are, because one thing I like about Silent Hill is the endings and everything that you do, it is all based on like actions and reactions and consequences. Because in Silent Hill 2 is like, if you want James to commit suicide, then you go for in water, you don't care about your health, and then at the end of the game that happens. But if you want him to be more noble, heal himself, save Mary, you know, listen to her conversations, give more into that quest of trying to find out if she's really in this town, then you get the one where he takes the child under Mary's wishes and they both leave the town. So I think that reactions like that is the perfect avenue for Silent Hill games, as opposed to your choices not really mattering at the end of the day. I think getting that significant ending that you want to get, or secret endings, was the best way to go about the gameplay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
The alien dog ending, I remember that.
Oh yeah, and remember the ending in Silent Hill 2, the dog ending where James finds that room.
That's
He speaks in
tradition.
Japanese.
Yeah, that is tradition. I feel like if they even care to continue Silent Hill in the future, we don't know, but it's tradition to have that UFO ending because it's so stupid that and it's funny.
They had the one with Harry.
Yeah, and
Harry and that channeling stone.
yeah,
So weird.
the channeling stone and getting abducted, and it's all for comedy, which I appreciate stuff like that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, but I think
the Heather and the Sexy Beam. I forget that one. That was a thing too.
Yeah,
Sexy
UFO.
beam.
where she's Sailor Moon, and I'm just like, this is a clear homage to that. This is so funny.
I love that, especially you can get a working lightsaber that, believe it or not, has like really, really good lighting effects for the PlayStation 2 at the time. Like Silent Hill 3 was just one gigantic, big showing of how the PlayStation 2 can really make a game look awesome.
But I guess we can do our outros and sign off. This was pretty fun. Like I said, I put another topic in because I wanted to extend the longevity of the podcast, because it was like, I think we were nearing like 40 minutes. I was like, damn, we wrapped this up real fast, so let's do another topic. But ultimately it came together, so we're going to do outros. I'll start with Andre. Where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Andre B Venom. I also have a YouTube. I've been actually putting out videos quite a bit lately. I do want to keep that momentum up. And yeah, that's pretty much concludes what I have to say.
All right, Bernie.
Yeah, same thing. You can find me on Twitter at Bernion. And you can also find me on twitch.tv/Bernion. I finally changed the whole channel to English, so there's no more language barrier. I think, I guess, I hope.
Mr. Drillbit, where can we find you, buddy?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Drillbit777. That's really where I'm only active on. But yeah, that's really you can find me on.
Lanos, where can we find you?
All right, you can find me on YouTube under Lanos Meyer. You can also find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Lanos Meyer, and you can also find me on Spotify because I'm a recording artist. So check me out there as well.
Mr. Max, where can we find you, buddy?
Always shocked that you refer to me as Mr. You can find me on twitch.tv/LordEctro, where I am a variety streamer, currently going through Dead Space, which I've been having a really good time with. And also on Twitter at, Lord Ectro as well. I never know how Twitter works. I don't understand most social media, but yeah.
And Jojo, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/thelostjojo. I shit post stupid stuff there, so if you're into that, you'll see it. And I'm on the YouTube channel JoJo's Woodshed, where I'm actually going to start a stream of the campaigns of the Gears of War series now that I have Game Pass Ultimate to play them all with.
Awesome. And you can find me on Twitter at RentOperative_. You can find me on YouTube at Renegade Operative. I uploaded a bit on my YouTube channel, so if you want to go check that out, I did like some breakdowns for DMC, the Exoprimal closed beta. I talked about all the creatures in Last of Us. If you want to go watch those videos, those are currently available, as well as this podcast is going to be available a little bit later. So yeah, just go ahead and enjoy that on the Infinite Ammo Syndicate account, and I will be there because I have another podcast in the next 2 days. We're going to be talking about RPGs, or the recently released ones that were shown at this mini E3 that happened last month. So that's going to be fun, talking about Final Fantasy Rebirth and everything under the sun. But we're signing out. Hopefully you guys had a lot of fun listening to this podcast, and we will see you next time. Later.